And
Lauren, why do I mean, I know you have a podcast and you put a lot of, videos out and things like that. Is that the purpose of them, or do you create self-hypnosis recordings, MP3s for your clients?
I do. Well, one of the things that I do, which I was planning to come to under my heading of the benefits, but I can talk a bit about it now. There's lots of reasons why I think there's a benefit in learning a skill like this. And for me personally, one of the things that I do is that when people book to see me nowadays, I will send them a link to a short hypnotic relaxation audio. And I'll encourage them over a few days to have a listen to that and to report back to me on what they experience. I kind of give them that as homework before they even come in. Now, when they arrive in, there's a few things that are going to happen from this. So the first is that they haven't listened to it at all. And that in itself is actually feedback for me, because there's potentially a reason why they haven't listened to it. Are they time poor? Because if they are, then I have to be mindful of that with any additional homework I give. Otherwise, it may not be achieved. Or are they scared to listen to it? Do I need to go back to my pre-talk and really help to make them feel a little bit more comfortable about what this hypnosis experience is? Or are they fully committed to their change? I think of hypnotherapists like James Tripp, who said recently that when you're working with a client, they must want the change more than you do. And as hypnotists, I know that we're so invested in wanting the best for our clients. We're so invested in wanting to see them change and to have that change they want. But as he rightfully says, we have to step back. They have to want the change more than we do. Or as I remember asking Freddie Jacquin about how he got such remarkable results with his clients, and he said he didn't mean this in a negative way. But he just had to learn not to care. Some people are going to get the results they want and some people are not, and that's okay. But it's about, are they invested? And so if they rock up to the session and they haven't listened to it and they seem completely ambivalent to it, well, then probably where you need to start is about really digging into why this change is important to them and building that motivation. On the flip side of that, they have listened to it. And they may come in and one of a few things might happen there. They might say that it was a purely transformative, godlike experience for them. And in that case, whatever you did in your recording, do it again in the session. Great feedback. They're highly receptive to the way you work. Do that. They might say, yeah, I think I experienced something, but I'm not really sure. In which case, go back to your pre-talk again. Again, there's more information that's coming back. Or they might come back and say, I experienced absolutely nothing. And again, it's great feedback. It's, again, going back to that pre-talk. At least with the I experienced something, you might be able to work in a different kind of approach in terms of your induction. But if they experience nothing, then ask them, well, what did you experience? What else came from that? And that's all from just sending a 15-minute hypnosis recording when it came in. Now, think of it this way as well. If they did have that wonderfully transformative, godlike experience that we were talking about earlier, one, they're getting used to going to hypnosis. Two, they're getting used to going to hypnosis to the sound of your voice. Imagine how much more powerful it's going to be when they sit in that chair and you start your session and they immediately begin to, it's an anchor, isn't it, really? They're going to have a far easier experience, as are you, because they've practiced going to hypnosis to the sound of your voice. Even that alone, it's a really useful investment of time to create that recording and send it out. Not to mention, can you imagine what the reaction they have when they make a booking and you're already sending them things? That's value. They're going to go, wow, this person's really committed to my change. So there's those sorts of things that are really important. You mentioned my podcast there. Yes, I create a podcast because a few reasons. The first is that the great thing about a podcast is that I get the opportunity to reach out to specialists in my niche area and to ask to sit down with them and to spend an hour picking their brains about anything I want. It's practically a masterclass that I have the opportunity to have with these wonderful individuals. And then I get to create this content that I share with the world and hopefully help a whole lot of other people through that process as well, which in turn helps to build my reputation within whatever niche area I might be. So, you know, you referenced my podcast, The Confident Hypnotherapist, which is obviously aimed at hypnotherapists. And I created that podcast because, you know, despite the fact that I've been a hypnotherapist since 2015, I still have moments where I wonder, am I actually any good at this? There's days where I think I'm absolutely fantastic, and there's other days where I think, am I actually any good? And I want to explore that because I know there are other people out there that experience that. And the best way for me to explore that was to create this podcast. And I still get emails now from people saying, oh, listen to your podcast, and it's really helped to allow me to get past those own limiting beliefs I might have had. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. So that's
you ask really great questions. I've listened to a lot. I do all of my household chores are done with you.
Oh, really?
So you know. Yeah.
I hope I pick up the vacuum and help.
Yeah, you're the soundtrack to my housework. But you ask great questions. Really, really. Sometimes I hear somebody and I'm like, what's Lauren's going to say about that? And you come and you have great reactions, great responses, the way you probe and go deeper, and you really ask like questions that the listener really wants to know.
Well, thank you for that. The reality is sometimes I'm sitting there in my own head thinking, what am I going to ask them next? And isn't that not too dissimilar to what you might experience sometimes when you're with a client and you're sitting there with them and they're talking about all this stuff and you're thinking, crikey, this is an interesting one. Geez, I sounded very Australian then, didn't I? I didn't mean to. Crikey, geez, it sounded like, what was his name?
Well, my friend in the UK says that also. But, you know, I've heard people say on podcasts, I don't remember which one, you know, some expert being interviewed, he said, you want to be really successful in whatever area, go back and think of a problem that you needed help with, that you solved for yourself.
That's the niche area. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right. And, you know, that's exactly how my podcast came about. I experienced imposter syndrome. I wanted to create something to any of the hypnotherapists out there who have gone into this field, I'm sure, because they're driven by a desire to help people. And so it was a great idea to be able to create a podcast around that. Not to mention the fact, you know, again, bring it back to the whole point of this webinar, you know, learning how to record means you can create hypnosis recordings that you can sell, or that you can create hypnosis programs. Some of you may have done Sheila Granger's virtual gastric band, for instance. Now, as part of that program, she has 2 hypnosis audio recordings that you give to your clients in between sessions. Now, you could give them the versions with Sheila doing the recordings, but I'm sure Sheila would absolutely agree with me here that it's going to sound so much better if you give them those recordings done in your voice. It's going to be easily a far more powerful program. So
I'm learning Freddie Jacquin, and he has a gastric bypass thing. Are they the same?
Virtual gastric band essentially is just a gastric band done virtually. So Sheila's is probably one of the most recognized globally. But you know, all these wonderful hypnotherapy trainers out there have so much to offer, and it's great to be able to listen to all of them and to explore all of them and to see what they have that might work for us. So, oops, someone's just arrived. Let them into the room. Everyone say hi, Chris, when he arrives. It will scare the hell out of him. Here we go. Sneak him in. Here he comes. Actually, no, it might be a she. Chris is such a name that it could be either one there. Oh, thank you there. So I just shared Sheila Granger's one as well. And she's lovely. She's actually fantastic.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hi, Chris.
Chris is joining us. We've been waiting for you, Chris. Thanks for joining us. So let's have a chat then a little bit about bringing it back to the topic of our webinar being about recording basics 101. So what I'll do is I'll talk you through essentially what I believe to be the most straightforward, easiest way to be able to do hypnosis audio recordings, or for that matter, any kind of content that involves audio. A strange little bit of hair that's on my eyelid. It's been driving me crazy. So if you see me doing that, it's not some sort of nervous tick. It's me frantically trying to get rid of a piece of hair that's just flipping around there. So a little bit about me. I've been running these workshops, both online and in person, since 2016. I've actually lost count of how many of these workshops I've run based on this topic now. But my aim has always been to teach people, particularly those that are technophobic, about how to be able to create, we all are at some point, Emma, how to create some great sound hypnosis audio recordings with the equipment you most likely already have and from the comfort of your own home. With the webinar today, you are more than welcome if you want to take notes, if that's how you learn. You are also more than welcome to just watch and soak it up, as a replay will be sent around. Whatever works best for you is absolutely fine. My own background, I actually worked in the music industry for over a decade here in Australia. I was working with artists as diverse as Olivia Newton-John and Kylie Minogue at one point there. And I was working more so on the marketing side of things, but I had this passion for audio editing. And it's kind of funny because many of my fellow label managers at the record label I worked for, if they had a 12-inch record they needed to edit down, instead of sending it out to some audio professional to do, they'd kind of come to my office and knock on the door. Would you mind just editing down this 12-inch for me, please? And I'd go home and do it that night and come back. And a week later, I'd hear it on the radio stations here. So it was kind of a little bit of fun for me to be able to do that kind of work. And it's something that has just carried on now. You know, I worked in the music industry unbelievably 2 decades ago. And so it's something that's been part of my life always. And I love teaching it and sharing it. So I'm really thrilled that I get the opportunity, particularly this close to Christmas, and particularly where it's 9 a.m. in certain parts of the world, to be able to talk with you all about that today. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you need to be able to create some hypnosis audio recordings. I'm assuming all of you are potentially on computers. This is obviously one of the key things that you're going to need. Doesn't matter if it's a Windows machine or a Mac machine, it's absolutely fine. I have been asked in the past about iPads, and certainly there are apps on iPads that will record. I tend to teach more using a desktop or laptop computer, only because there's more functionality in that sense with the program that I teach. If you are planning to get serious about creating some hypnosis audio content, the one area that I might recommend that you spend a little money in is probably around getting a fairly decent microphone. Now, the one that's probably the industry standard out there, is in the biggest selling home microphone, is this one here. It's a fairly hefty, big thing here. It's a microphone called a Blue Yeti. And the good thing about the Blue Yeti, it has quite a few good things. It's a USB microphone, which means it has a USB plug, and it means that you can just simply plug it straight into your computer and it's going to be able to work straight away out of the box. The other interesting thing about the Blue Yeti is that it has on the front there this dial with 4 different settings. And depending on the setting you put it on, it can be versatile in a few different settings. So for instance, there's a one that has a figure 8 on it right there. When I put the microphone into that figure 8 setting, I can have people sitting either side of the microphone and it will pick up both sides. So that's useful if you're planning to do an interview or a podcast or something along those lines. They're fairly inexpensive. Like, I mean, audio equipment can be quite pricey at the best of times. In Australia, these are around $200, which I think, if I was to convert that to pounds, you're probably looking at a little over £100. However, in terms of sound quality, that microphone is going to last you for years and years and be able to provide some really decent sounding recordings for you. Another thing you might want to consider is something called a pop filter. Now, I always get people to do this. If you get your hand and put it up in front of your mouth like that, and to start to say words beginning with T, and then words beginning with P, what do you notice? Probably what you notice is this expulsion of air that comes out. Now, just imagine what happens if your palm is a microphone. It's going to cause a distortion on your recording, something called a plosive. And so what you need is something that sits between your microphone and your mouth that will break up that airflow. And there's this thing called a pop filter, which essentially is a mesh that sits directly in front of the microphone, so that when you talk, if you were to have that strong expulsion of air, it would break it up for you. Now, you could make a pop filter with a coat hanger and stockings if you want. However, I know on eBay, these pop filters are about 10 Australian dollars, which would probably be about £5, not terribly much. There is a tip though, if you don't want to do that. Obviously, this is not the microphone I'm using right now. The microphone I'm using right now to talk is actually hidden here. And it's a blue snowball. And how do I avoid plosives with my blue snowball? I have the microphone sitting at about 45 degrees. So my airflow will go directly past it, but it will still be able to pick up my sound. So that's a little bit of a tip there. It's sitting right there, literally to the side. And it can still pick up my voice well enough without necessarily having to worry about that plosive. Now, the other thing you might want to consider is to get some headphones. Now, simple reason for that is this: when you begin to mix background music or perhaps binaural beats or something like that into your recording, I tend to find that you're going to be able to adjust the levels better when you're wearing headphones as opposed to just listening through your computer speakers. And the reason for that is because the majority of the people who are going to listen to your recordings are going to probably be listening to it from their smartphone with headphones on. And so if you haven't measured those levels right and the music is a little bit loud and your voice is a little bit soft, they're probably consciously going to register that. And the last thing we want is to have any kind of conscious interference going on when we're doing hypnosis recordings. Additionally, if you are someone who likes to talk with your hands, then you might want to consider getting something called a microphone arm that can connect to your desk, and your microphone can connect to that. So your microphone is up off the table. Because I know that if I was to hit the table right now, I don't know if you can hear that or not. I know, I won't mention the poor hypnotherapist's name, fairly well-known one, but I was doing some recordings with her once, and every time she'd sent recordings to me, and every time that she mentioned her name, she somehow managed to kick the table with her foot, and it distorted her name. And so I had to keep going back and saying, please put your feet a little way back there so that we don't have that distortion going on. So they're the key main things. You know, you've got your computer, maybe a microphone, maybe a pop filter, headphones. If you're likely to hit your table a lot, get a microphone arm. Software is another thing. We'll come back to that shortly. But the other thing I want to talk about is the recording environment that you're in. I always say to people that 50% of a good recording comes down to the recording environment you're in. If you can get a good, clean recording at the very start, half of the hard work is out of the way. Now, what is a good recording environment? It's an obvious question. And I dare say it's not too dissimilar to the environment you'd want to see your hypnosis clients in. So essentially somewhere that's going to be quiet, somewhere where you're unlikely to be interrupted, where you're unlikely to have your kids or your partner come in and say what you're doing, somewhere where your dog or your cat is unlikely to come in and start making noises. Now, it's not the end all be all if you can't have that. I actually live in the roof of a school that was opened in 1888. And the glass that is directly in front of me right now is the original glass, super thin. You can see the bauble in it on certain days. And I live on a main road. I also live across the road from a pub. On certain nights when that pub is really going off, I could pretty much be lying in the middle of the bar. It feels like I can hear everything. Everything. I know what Cheryl did to Trevor, and Trevor should be ashamed of herself. That's what That's what I reckon. So there are ways that you can work around that, but ideally you want a space where you're going to be at the back of the house if you can, and where where there's not as much noise as possible. The other thing to keep in mind is to have as much soft furnishings around you as you can. And the reason why is simply because those soft furnishings, those soft fabrics, carpets, rugs, towels, that sort of thing, will soak up the sound. It prevents it from bouncing. I don't know about you, but I like singing in the shower. And part of the reason why I like singing in the shower is because there's this natural reverb that happens from the sound of my voice hitting those hard tiles and bouncing back. It makes it sound full on. But that's not the kind of sound you want with the hypnosis audio recording. You want something that's a little bit more intimate. And so being able to have those soft furnishings, and ideally, if you have a space big enough, recording in your closet is actually ideal. In the last training I did, one of my participants had a spare closet and she built a little recording studio in her closet. And she was amazed at the difference from going in there, hanging up some rugs. You know, she had a little light in there so she can see. She wasn't in the dark. It's not like Donna Summer recording Love to Love Your Baby or something like that. And it was, for her, the sound quality just improved immediately from having the right environment. So the right environment is another aspect of it. If you haven't got one, don't let that put you off from trying to record. Don't let any of this put you off from trying to record. It's always something you can work around, but this is the ideal, so to speak. So let's talk about the software. Now, the software in question is a piece of software called Audacity, which we've been speaking about before. If you go searching for Audacity, make sure you go to this URL here, audacityteam.org.au. And if you click on that, you can either go to the download top there and select your operating system, or click on the download Audacity button there, and it should automatically pop up and begin to download. And then all you need to do is just run that file and it will install automatically on your computer really easily. So some people may not want to use Audacity. That's absolutely fine. A lot of the things that I'm going to show you in this can be taken across to other forms of digital audio workstations, whether you have GarageBand or anything like that. However, the reason I tend to use Audacity is simply because of the fact it's free. It can work on both Mac and Windows machines. It has a lot of really incredible features, which I'll show you some of today. And in terms of being able to use it for recording for hypnotherapists, you're probably not going to get much better. So it's definitely, in my opinion, the one to be able to go for. So let's have a look at that. And, Elizabeth, take a deep breath, because we're going to bring up Audacity again here now.
Thank you.
Now, I can understand that if you've not used Audacity before and you get a screen like this when you first turn it on, it can be quite confronting and intimidating. You may not necessarily know what you're going to do. So what my intention is right now over the next 5 minutes is to show you how quick and easy it is to be able to use Audacity. So here's the first thing, or my first hot tip. Before you turn on Audacity, make sure you've plugged in your USB microphone. Now, there's a reason for that, simply being that if you plug in your USB microphone after you've started Audacity, Audacity may not be able to find it. Whereas if you have plugged it in prior, Audacity will absolutely have found it. Now, once I have started up my Audacity, the first thing I will want to do is to be able to tell Audacity what microphone it's going to record from. How's it going to get the sound into it? And you'll see over here, that we have this little microphone icon and a pull down menu. If I go into that pull down menu, it will have all the different options that I have in terms of input, sound input at the moment. I'm using my blue snowball, so I'm going to select that as the microphone that I'm going to record from. Now I've told Audacity which microphone I'm going to use. The next step is that I want to be able to adjust the sound level to make sure that the sound level that it's recording is absolutely right. Now, over here, you'll see, and this is one hot tip, another hot tip. I'm big on the hot tips today, aren't I? Goodness me, end of the weekend and I'm all about the hot tips. If you bring your cursor and hover it over any of the icons, it will give you a description of what it is, which I find very useful. So if I come to the recording level meter here, this is going to be my indicator of how loud my recording is going to be. Now, the measurements are in decibels. The louder it is, the closer it gets to 0 decibel. And ideally, what I'm going to want is for my recording to be somewhere between -12 and -6 decibels. Now, it says to click to start monitoring. And if I click on that level there, you can see that this green jumping line comes up. And it's currently indicating how loudly it is recording my voice. And you can see from the blue line that at the moment in my normal speaking voice, that it's coming in at around -6, -12. Having said that, when I do hypnosis, chances are I'm probably not going to be using my normal speaking voice, unless I'm doing something like active alert hypnosis, which is a different thing again, where you maintain your voice. Generally, what happens is that you'll probably drop your voice a little bit. It'll be a little bit softer. So either what I'm going to need to do is, well, firstly, it should be noted that if I'm too loud, I can adjust my volume here. Notice how I'm getting quiet? And then I can bring that back up again if I want. You can notice how this is adjusting that level there. But you might find that even at its fullest, it's still not coming in -6, -12. There's a couple of options there. You can either well, the real answer is this. You just need to bring yourself closer to the microphone. So either you can put your microphone on top of something, or option B, you bring yourself closer to the microphone. I try to avoid doing that on camera because you could all see my bald patch, and I hate that. I'm a terribly vain creature sometimes, and you know, it's the curse of doing this training is that, you know, maybe what I'll do is I'll just bring the microphone up closer to me this way. Okay. Once I have the level set, I can click on that meter again and know that the volume level is set appropriately. I should add, if any of you have any questions as I explain this, or if I'm going too fast, please tell me to stop for a moment and I'll back it up. Yep, Emma?
Okay. So it looks, I can see that you've got the line set between 6 and 0. How did you get the line to go there?
To be honest, it was because I brought it up closer to my mouth when I was talking my normal speaking voice.
Oh, so does it just register that? You don't set that, it just
I don't set that.
that.
It's a measure for you.
Okay.
So it's letting me know that my loudest voice at that point was coming in between 0 and -6 decibels.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. So now that I have my level set, I have my microphone set, it's now at the point where I can start recording. Now, here's a few things that I tend to do when I do a recording, particularly if I'm reading from a script. What I'll do is this. Firstly, when I hit the big red shiny start button to start recording, I'm going to go silent for 5 seconds. There's a reason for that. I'll come back to it, but I'm going to go silent for 5 seconds and just let Audacity record the sounds around me at this point in time. The second thing is this. If I make a mistake, here's what I do. I pause, I clap, I pause, and I go back to the start of the previous sentence I was just saying. So pause, clap, pause, start of the previous sentence. I know it sounds like I'm going mad, but I assure you all of this has a purpose and a reason. So let's do a mini test recording. I'm only going to record something for about a minute or so. And during that time, I'm going to intentionally make some mistakes, okay? So it's not me just being absolutely crap at what I do. It's me making intentional mistakes. Just clarifying that on the onslaught there, right? Okay, so here we go. In a moment, I'm going to hit the big red shiny record button, silent for 5 seconds, then I'll start. Begin by just closing those eyes, taking a deep breath. As you breathe out, just allow yourself to relax and let go. That's right. As you allow yourself to relax, just imagine now. Imagine breathing out the tension and stress of the day. Breathing in calm. Breathing in calm and relaxation. That's right. That was pretty crap, actually, but that's okay. That's what happens at the end of the weekend when my mind's not in that space. So I've just made a recording. And as you can see, that recording is visually represented on this track as something called a waveform. Now, if I want to view that entire waveform that I've just recorded, I can go up to view, track size, and fit to width. And that's now going to show me the entire recording that I've just made. Now, what you'll probably notice to start off with is that whenever I've clapped or whenever I've coughed, it's created this huge spike in the waveform. That's really useful if you've done a 30-minute recording and you don't want to sit there and listen through it to find where your mistakes are, that you can visually mark each of it and know that this is a mistake and this is a mistake. Now, obviously, Emma, that's going to be a little bit harder if you're in session with a client. I would not recommend that you clap when you have a client in front of you. That might cause some form of bringing them back, a re-emergence or whatever. That might be a different kind of scenario. In that instance, you may just want to jot down a time or a note on your pad to let yourself know that that's where it's going to be. But if you are recording, whether it be from a script or something like that, then this is a good thing. The other thing I will add also is that if you are reading from a script and you're recording, perhaps look at getting, there are free auto cue programs on the computer, and you can install, just copy and paste your script into that and read it from that instead of the rustling of paper, because the rustling of paper can be heard, whereas the auto cue makes it a lot easier there. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is to be able to edit out the mistakes that we've made. So again, how do we do that? Well, I know that the first mistake happened here. So the first thing I want to do is to be able to highlight the area that I wish to edit. And I can do that by clicking anywhere on the track, holding down my mouse button and dragging across and releasing my mouse button at the end of the selection. So it's now highlighted that. Now I'm just going to play this, and can you please tell me if you can hear it clearly on your end? Yep, great, fantastic. Now, if I should also add right now that if I wanted to change the boundaries of that selection right now, if I move in towards the boundary, you'll notice that the cursor changes to a finger pointing like that. And if I click on my mouse again, I can move those boundaries. Now I know that that's the mistake there that I want to edit out. I've highlighted it. How do I delete it? I simply hit the delete key on my keyboard, and it's now gone. Now, if you've got a 30-minute recording with lots of these spikes on, or not lots of, just when you make a mistake, unless you're really terrible, in which case you're going to make lots of mistakes, in which case the first statement was true. But anyway, if you do a recording and it has these spikes, and the best way to do it is to be able to click on the track where the error is and then use the zoom in key to be able to go to where the mistake is. So for instance, I can look at this and I can see a similarity in those waveforms. If I was to play that entire bit, breathing in calm, breathing in, right. So we can hear that that's breathing in, you can see breathing. You can see even how the waveforms look very similar there. I can go back and use that readjusting tool, and I can hit delete and zoom back out. And we've now managed to clear the recording of those two mistakes. So that recording, if I play it from start to finish, should now be completely free of those errors. Begin by just closing those eyes, taking a deep breath. As you breathe out, just allow yourself to relax and let go. That's right. As you allow yourself to relax, just imagine now. Imagine breathing out the tension and stress of the day. Breathing in calm and relaxation. That's right. So we got rid of all those errors, which is fantastic. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is that if I just make a selection within that first 5 seconds and play that, can you see that the background noise is coming in at around -38 decibels? So it's actually, if you were to have headphones on, you would actually really notice that background noise. So what we want to do is to be able to get rid of that background noise, to be able to clear that out and to clean up that recording a little bit more. How do we do that? So the first thing I need to do is to tell Audacity, this is an example of the background noise that I want to get rid of. And the way I do that is to highlight, as I have here, a selection within that first 5 seconds. The next step is to go into the Effect pull-down menu here and to select Noise Reduction. And you can see that there's 2 steps to noise reduction. The first step is that it's going to ask for an example of the background noise that I wish to remove from the recording. And all I need to do is hit that button, Get Noise Profile. And I've now told Audacity that this here is an example of the background noise that I wish to get rid of. The next step is that I can either double click within that file to select the entire file, or I can go up into Select All. And then I want to be able to go into Effect, Noise Reduction. And what this top line says here is that anywhere in the recording where Audacity finds that background noise, it's going to reduce the volume of that down further by 16 decibels. So if it was around -38 decibels, then it's going to be going down to around -50 decibels after this process. So if I hit OK on that, and if we go back and play some of this now, look at that. It's down to around that -50 decibels. So it's improved it immediately. And the last step that I will want to do in this process for now, there are lots of other, I should add, there's lots and lots of effects. If I go into the effects, you can see that there are many effects that come with Audacity here that do different things. In my full training, I do go into what a lot of those effects do. But for now, I'm just showing you what some of the most important ones are to make a really good sounding recording. So now that I've edited out the mistakes and I've done the noise reduction to help remove that background noise, what I'd like to do next is to be able to do something called normalize, which is to increase the volume of my speaking voice to a certain point where it's a lot louder, basically. So if I go into effect and choose normalize, and I've got -1 decibel there, if I click OK, it's only slightly adjusting it up, but it's now going to increase the volume of that recording just that little bit more. Has anyone got any questions at this point? I do feel like sometimes I just sit here and ramble for an hour, and hopefully people don't get lost in the way there. There's no tumbleweeds going yet, so that's good. Emma.
Sorry, I seem to be the one asking all the
No,
questions.
go for it. Love it.
If you've got somebody on, what you're talking about is doing a recording when you haven't got anybody with you, haven't you? Aren't you? Yeah.
Yes.
Because I was thinking, oh, maybe I could do this when, but obviously if I've got a client on Zoom, but if I'm seeing someone face to face, I do all my recordings when I'm with somebody. So
if you have a client in Zoom, you could hit the record button on Zoom, provided that they're okay with that.
Okay.
And then you can drop that audio that it records into Audacity and clean it up afterwards.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that is one thing you can do there. There is another a bit of codec, it's called, that you need to install. But I'll tell you what, in the follow-up email to this, where I send out the replay, I will send you the link to find that codec, install it. So you could easily just then take your Zoom file, drop it into Audacity, and to do a similar thing with this.
Okay.
Yeah. Tara, you had a question there.
Oh, yes, I have. I think that it's a better order to normalize first and noise reduction second.
I've done some tests on that myself, to be honest.
Did you?
And what I found is that it's much the muchness, because I wondered that myself. And the easiest way to do that was to basically do a few recordings and to take those same recordings and to check. And what I found was that it was pretty much the muchness. Nothing here is set hard and fast. In fact, even if you look at the manual for Audacity, a lot of the plugins will have what they just say is a try and see approach in many ways. But you know what, Tara, if that if that process works best for you, by all means, absolutely do that. Whatever works best for you is the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that we've got that file, and I won't go playing it again because it just sounds like I love the sound of my voice if I do that. Let's have a look at how to add some background music into it, because that's often what people want to do next. So you can import your background music by simply going to File, Import Audio. Although Audacity also allows you to drop and drag your files on as well. And I thought I had my folder open, and I don't. So I just need to go to my folder. And to find some background music there. And to drop that on. Okay. And you can see if you drop and drag it on, Audacity will read it immediately and import it. It does take a few seconds depending on the file size. This particular music track is 30 minutes long. So given that my talking is 44 seconds at this point in time, there's obviously going to be a comparable difference there, which we can see immediately. So what I'll do then is I'm going to zoom in to this side. Oops. Now, if I was to hit play, let's just have a listen to this and let's see what your feedback is immediately. Begin by just closing those eyes. Taking a deep breath. As you breathe out, just allow yourself to relax and let go. That's right. As you allow yourself to relax, just imagine now. Imagine breathing out the tension and stress of the day. Breathing in calm and relaxation. That's right. So immediate thoughts, what would we change here?
If the music is too loud.
Music's too loud? Yep. What else?
Maybe more music before you spoke.
Yep, absolutely. So we want to be able to have the music start before we start speaking. Great. So let's have a look at those couple of things first off. So at the very start of the track, there is what's referred to as the master track controls here. And within that, you can see that there's a negative and a plus. This is, of course, relating to volume. Now on the master track, I can turn that down immediately to about 6 decibels. However, there's something else that I will do. But before I do that, let's address the voice starting at the same time as the music. Where would we ideally want the voice to come in? How many seconds in?
10 seconds, maybe?
10 seconds? Okay, cool. So one of the, and I should add that with Audacity, previously, there was an additional button here that was called the time shift tool. And when you clicked on that and then clicked into the track, you can move the track. In the most recent version of Audacity, they've got rid of the time shift tool. And instead, they've created this thing called handles, which I think is really useful. The handle is simply up here. You can see that if I bring my cursor up there, it turns into a hand. If I click down on my mouse while I am in the handle, I can now just move that track. It's about 10 seconds there. And then let go, and it's now locked into place there. So I've now been able to change the start time of the spoken word. The next thing that we want to do, though, is to adjust the volume using something called the envelope tool. Now, the envelope tool is like this egg timer shaped button here. If I click on that, you notice these blue lines that appear around the waveforms. And my cursor is turned into this egg timer shape. And I can go to any point on the timeline and create, simply by clicking my mouse, these points. And I'm doing 2 at each point. Oops. It's going to be difficult for me tonight, isn't it? Okay. So what I can do is, I'm just going to make another point there, is if I click and drag that in, you can see that the waveform is becoming thinner. And basically what I'm doing there is saying to Audacity, it's going to be full volume, then it's going to dip down in volume all the way through that and then go back up. Once I've created my points that I'm happy with, I can go back into the selection tool and lock them in. So let's have a play of that now and just see how that sounds. Begin by just closing those eyes, taking a deep breath. As you breathe out, just allow yourself to relax and let go. That's right. As you allow yourself to relax, just imagine now. Imagine breathing out the tension and stress of the day. Breathing in calm and relaxation. That's right. Is that sounding better?
Yes.
Excellent.
Why, Lawrence, why do you want to do that? Make it louder.
When you say that, what specifically do you mean by that?
Why do you want to make it dip down? Why do you want to make it then louder, the music?
It's simply just allowing the music to duck down so that the music doesn't overpower the voice. Now, you don't have to do that. If you, again, it all comes back to subjectivity, really, doesn't it? And ultimately, if you put in your background music and you adjust it at the master volume and you think it's sitting okay with your voice, then
No,
really
that I understand. I was the one that said it's too loud, but
Yeah.
why do you want to make it louder after your voice stops speaking?
because then it just brings the focus back to the music as opposed to it sounding just like the music's always been at the wrong volume.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit like when when you listen to the radio and the DJ's talking over a song, and
Right.
when they finish doing their talking, the music comes back up again. It's a similar sort of thing. It's basically a duck. Now we've got that set. Might go into view track size or fit to width. I've got all this excessive music here. So I'm going to want to be able to get rid of that and to be able to have a nice fade at the end. So much like before, I can highlight the music that I want to get rid of by just highlighting them out and hitting delete. And I'll fit to width again, so it's easier. And then I can highlight that track. I'm just going to move this over here. Highlight that track until I see a yellow line. You see that yellow line that comes up there? And I don't want to go over that yellow line. I just wanted to stop at that yellow line. And then I can go up into Effect and choose Fade Out. And that will now fade out the music so that by the time it gets that yellow line, that's the 0 point where it knows to stop. And so if I was to play that now, it would have this lovely gentle fade out towards the end of the track. So now I've done all that, it's time to be able to save my track. And the easiest way to do that is to go into File and choose Export as either an MP3, which is a compressed version of audio. So if you're planning to send this via email or upload it to a Dropbox or a Google Drive or something like that, I would generally recommend you use MP3. You could export as any other files. WAV is going to be a larger file. It's not got any form of compression on it in a sense. So the file size is going to be big. Whereas if I use MP3, it's going to be a much smaller file size. And if I choose export as MP3, the first thing that comes up is that it's going to ask me to choose a destination where the file is going to be saved. In this instance, I'm just going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call the file size or file test. The second thing is the format options. So depending on the quality that you want, I tend to find that if I keep it at variable and around that 145 to 185, it's a good enough quality for what people are wanting to use on their smartphone devices. When I hit save, the next thing that comes up is this thing called metadata. Now, currently the metadata that's in there is from the backing track, which is from Silencio Music, which I should add a quick plug for them. If you're planning on getting some background music, if you're planning on creating some recordings that are going to be sold or anything along those lines, make sure you get royalty-free licensed music, and Silencio Music are fantastic for that. Really good selection of tracks and fantastic prices. With the metadata, what that does is that when someone puts the track into their MP3 player, like iTunes or something along those lines, the metadata is the information that comes up. So for instance, if I was to clear that and to say that the artist name is Florence Akers, test hypnotherapy, track number 1, year 2021, genre hypnotherapy, and hit OK, it will now export the finished file to my desktop, which I can then put into my Dropbox or my Google Drive or however I intend to be able to get it to my clients. So that's the nice and easy way to be able to do it. Has anyone got any questions for me at this point in time?
Lawrence, thank you. And it's, even though thank you for like letting me put my foot in the water, just breaking in this thing, because all of this is very intimidating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, let's say I had asked people on the Jacquin website about a microphone. They recommended a different one, not that Yeti one.
Oh, but they recommend
something with an R that begins with an R.
that'd be probably a Rode. the Rode NT USB, which
I think
It was a Rode. I think
yeah.
it was a Rode.
Rode, as Tara will tell you, and I've got some products here, Rode do great products as well. They
so. It doesn't
absolutely do.
matter which one.
No, to be honest, microphones are generally just, as long as it's, you know, as long as it's a fairly respectable brand. So Blue, who make the Yeti and the Snowball, is a respectable brand. Rode is a respectable brand as well. I think you can't really go wrong there. Tara, did you have some advice there? I can see your hand up.
Okay, yes, if I can say something.
Yeah, go for it.
I've got the Rode NT USB, and I used it. My problem is that I do not have any corner in my flat to use as a studio, and it picks up everything. As you told, the table sound, it takes the computer fan sound and it took everything, you know, and I was really pissed off because of this, and I had a very long cable. They gave me a very long cable, 5 meters or something. So I plugged in the computer and went to the other room, closed the door, and started to make the recordings. So it was not so easy. Therefore, I decided to change to this little stuff I showed you earlier. I show you again. This is Rode Wireless Go, and this stuff has a transmitter and a receiver. The receiver you can plug with this microphone out to any microphone in, and this is an easy pluggable microphone. And in the video, if it is here, you cannot see that I've got any stuff. So now I made some tests with this, and I like it very much. It has no background noise. Directly takes my sound, and if I go out and I've got this cap, and I can make such a little stuff. So I like this, and there are two different versions. The first version is the Wireless Go, has a one transmitter and the one receiver, and the Wireless Go 2 has two transmitters, and you can make talks with someone, and therefore I think it is useful if you want to talk to someone, not in this way, that through the internet, but directly, because you can get directly the sounds. And the other, the Rode is an Australian company, so you just support your own country.
To give you a nutshell here, I always feel like doing that whenever I say that, but to give you a nutshell thing, there are lots of different types of microphones, but the two most common types of microphones is one called a condenser microphone and one called a dynamic microphone. Now, in a recording studio setting, a dynamic microphone will generally be used for anything that is louder and that involves a striking hit, so to speak. So for instance, a drum kit would be mic'd up with a dynamic microphone, and it tends to record directly what is in front of it. Whereas a vocalist will tend to use a condenser microphone, which the Blue Yeti is, the Rode NT is a condenser microphone. They're both large diaphragm condenser microphones. The benefit of them is that they record a greater, they can pick up on the nuances of your voice, but the downside, as Tora said, is that they can pick up a lot of surrounding sound as well. If you can find a dynamic microphone, that is a USB microphone, and you're in a particular noisy setting, then a dynamic microphone might be the better option for you. And I suspect that the Rode wireless microphones are dynamic microphones, which is why that they do that. So it really comes down to the settings that you're in. I always recommend Blue Yeti simply because it's the largest selling home microphone. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the best one for you. It just means it's the one that sells the most. If you can find a dynamic USB microphone, that could be the option as well.
And Lawrence, Audacity, I'm sure you said it, but I'd gotten up to get coffee. Audacity, you just download it from the internet. Is it paid? You have to pay for
Completely
membership?
free.
It's completely free.
It's completely free.
And is there like, a manual, something?
There is.
Because
There's an online manual at the website as well.
there's so many features. Like some
It does,
these
yeah.
things are very overwhelming.
It's the reason why I have my training that I do, is to be able to go into
Right.
a lot of different effects, and then we go into the practical side of it. I mentioned my training. Obviously, people are more than welcome to go on that. That's not the purpose of this webinar, though. I really want people to be able to know how to do the basics of recording so that they can play with this and have some fun with this and reach more people with this and expand it. But there is certainly...
Your training is what? The more hands-on, more of this?
I go into all the different... I go into a lot of the different effects. I go into additional plugins that you can get as well. I go into bits on podcasting, creating binaural beats. How do you create landing pages in MailChimp and to be able to start collecting email addresses? So it goes into more kind of a practical application, as well as expanding on this a little bit more.
Oh, so it's much more than just how to make recordings. Okay.
Has anyone else got any questions at all? I mean, obviously, if you at any point, feel free to email me. More than happy to answer any questions you might have. And hopefully, though, this has encouraged you enough to think maybe having a play with Audacity, maybe seeing what you can create, and see if it takes 2022 into new directions for you with having a few more skills that you can use.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank
I
you
hadn't
so
even
much.
heard of Audacity.
Was that, sorry, Emma?
I said I hadn't even heard of Audacity, so that's really, really helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Well, you guys have a
Go and
wonderful
download it
day,
now.
and I'll speak to you when I do. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Goodbye.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.